Good evening and welcome
Sure.
to Lawfully Chaotic, Season 2, Episode 19.
Paradox is first tonight.
What's that?
Paradox is first tonight. He beat 3 miles in the chat.
No, Twisted. Matt won. Twisted was in. Oh, he was in. Like,
Twisted. Yeah, Twisted was in.
Yeah. Twisted. Matt, you win. I'm actually going to have to start giving something away to the first person in the chat.
Yeah, just
like stickers or something like that.
Like, give out the loser tag.
No, I like send free stickers. So Matt, I'll bring you some stickers this weekend when I see you. With me, as always, is my handsome and knowledgeable and talented co-host, Jason of TTRPG Academy. And joining us once again is the exceptionally talented Dragon Painter 468, Andy Warnken. We are going to talk about miniatures tonight. The mini industry, and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, where it's going, what's the industry looking like? How they dealing with the influx of 3D printing and the now ever popular VTT remote relationship between some of the more traditional make your own minis commercially are now doing digital minis that you could use in such things as Tailspire and other things.
No, I'm just buttering them up so I could break them down later on, and
I like butter.
Oh, butter's good. Andy, thanks for joining us again, man. It's good
of course.
Good to see you. Happy to have you here again.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You are a friend of the show. Anytime you want to hop on, let us know.
Awesome.
Before we start, announcements. Let's see. I have an announcement. I put. I gotta.
Here comes the poor production work.
Yeah. Volume 1.
Yeah, I saw on your Instagram, bro.
Yes,
you finally got your magic item publication.
You have inspired me with your furious rate of content output. Volumes 1, 2, and 3 of my Tome of Arcanum magic items.
Yeah,
you guys have seen them on my Instagram feed.
I remember seeing you making them too. I love the artwork.
So now I've got each volume has 5 each, and they are high-res PDFs printable into little like card-like format. So check those out in the store, along with Jason's awesome content. There are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 occult adventures, and there are 5 volumes of Fantasy Towns. We've also got some character prompt worksheets from Brian Gomez, the bearded nerd, who's also working on some more stuff. But all kinds of fun stuff in the store. So head over there, check it out, and buy some stuff.
And once again, we revisit the poor production work.
Yes. We will, I promise, by season F I promise you by our 10th year, we will hire a producer. Okay?
Yeah.
That is my promise to you. Jason,
so optimistic.
What do you so optimistic? Yeah, right. Jason, what do you got for announcements? I
met with
another 47 tables up and running.
No, I did just publish a new table called A Thief's Journey, which takes place along the Sword Coast, where you get to visit all the where you get to visit Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter. I also kicked off the Candela Obscura table today as well. My 3 to 6 o'clock event. Absolutely lovely new players, really freaking cool. And I'm loving the system, man. I am really loving it, and I've now played it 5 times within the last month, and it's been wonderful to practice it. My new Make It Your Own series that I'm creating is called The City Guide, where I'm creating 20-page singular cities with lots of really fun NPCs and landmarks. And you basically just the guide, you could plunk it down in any of your campaigns and, you have a fully outfitted city content ready to go whenever you need it. So my first version of that will hopefully be done by Sunday, so I can get you the first draft for your review by Monday. And just having a blast doing publications right now. It's kind of fun.
Excellent. Cool. I can't wait to get that up in the store. Andy, we're not going to ask you for announcements because it's going to be part of our entire conversation tonight. So
That's fine.
Unless you have anything pressing you want to announce, I won't keep you from it.
No, I got my Gen Con stuff today in the mail, so
nice.
Good luck.
Awesome.
It's coming.
Cool.
Yeah. That's gonna be interesting. Are you going as a particular? Are you just going as a badge visitor, or are you got any? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, badge visitor, and then we signed up for a bunch of events. So,
what were some of the events that they were?
There's so many.
Yeah.
I don't even know when is Gen Con.
It's the first
August.
August 3rd through the 6th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I'm very intrigued. I hope you get a chance to go see it. But they're supposed to be demoing the new Daggerheart at IndieCon.
Yes.
Ooh.
So that should be. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. I'm very eager to see what you think of it. I haven't seen anything other than what state of the roll that they did like 2 months ago, talking about how they're going to release it. But there's no quick start guide or anything on Daggerheart yet. So I'm very interested to see what you think.
Yeah, I don't know if it's been fully released or not yet. So
not at all. There's nothing.
No.
Yeah, so
this will be their first. This will be their first demo.
I do think the Candela source. I'm not telling anything that I shouldn't be because we all know it's coming out. I do think I'm not positive, but I think the Candela source book should be coming out relatively soon. I think they're wrapping up the art on that because I closed out what I was doing.
Awesome
on that. So yeah, hopefully we see that soon, and then that might give us just a taste of Daggerheart, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't know.
I know that they have a booth, and I plan on going to it, but I'm also assuming that there's going to be,
a million
4-hour line in line for the
That's
booth, so.
that when I've met Matt Mercer the first time, I stood in line for 4.5 hours, which is not something that I do. It's not something I have never done that before.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to meet him, and it was interesting because the way they broke the lines up, it was like 3 lines because it was so long. They had to break it up into like 3 rows. And I happened to be at the very front of the 3rd row. So I was literally like 7 feet away from him for 4 hours watching him interact with every single fan. And the reason that it was taking so long is because he did not rush anybody. He spent like 5 minutes speaking to basically every fucking person that walked up there.
That's awesome.
He is just, he's just amazing.
Very empathetic person. You can kind of get that vibe.
Empathetic, very humble, very thankful. He's just the sweetest guy.
I do it. Ryan's like that, man. He's a creeper.
Tomato,
creeper,
whatever.
Man.
Yeah.
Straight up.
There's no restraining order. It's not stalking yet.
Exactly. I know. I've got Matt Mercer's autograph on a restraining order. No, I actually have it on a dice tray somewhere and in one of my players' handbooks.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's where you store the restraining order? Copy?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it keeps it flat. It keep it in the pages, and it keeps
that makes sense.
So, Andy, enough of that bullshit.
Yeah. On the topic of tonight, tell us about your miniature journey since we last talked. Where are you at in your headspace, and have you been working on any interesting projects before we tackle our opinions on the condition of the miniature industry as it goes?
I've finished 2 whole minis since the last time we spoke.
Wow, that says a lot.
Yeah, mostly just due to work and still a little bit of burnout dealing with it, but I'm feeling better about it, and when I actually sit down, I get in the zone, and it's nice to have those days again.
Are you burned out just painting in general, which I know happens sometimes? You just got to take a break, or you burn out from doing commissions for people, which I know you've said you run hot and cold on.
I think it's more burnout of trying to paint something that I feel is worthy of posting on Instagram.
Okay.
So
you're chasing that chasing that social media brownstone.
Yeah.
Trying to chase that dragon.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Yep.
That's hard. That's gotta fuck you up a bit when it comes to trying to crawl back into your old headspace of why you used to love doing it. What are you doing to try to get back there?
I'm not posting on Instagram as much.
Gotcha.
I posted one of the models that I did, which was Thanos, actually, from the Marvel Crisis Protocol board game. And it was just one of those that I was like, I want to paint this model, and it turned out good enough that I was like, yeah, cool, I'll take pictures and post it and make a reel and make a TikTok and see what happens, and just did it kind of for fun. And then I bought the rest of the Black Order, and so I'm gonna assemble those guys and make a cool little diorama of Thanos and the Black Order.
So when you say, so if you don't feel something is like, if you finish something and like, what to you determines if it's good enough to post on Instagram? Is it actually the quality of your work? Is it the mini itself?
Yeah, it's mostly just the quality of what I feel that I painted. So, and sometimes I look back at some of my older stuff where it was more of painting for fun, but also having something that looked really cool, and getting that posted, and then seeing that it did really well, and seeing something that I felt like should have done really well that didn't. That just kind of it's the ups and downs, right? So
yeah, I mean I've been there. Any creative, we are our own worst critics, no matter what. And I've been there too with even with the minis, where I'll be like, I've pretty much posted everything that I've painted. Well, that's not true. Not everything. There are some things where I look at it, I'm like, it's not going to photograph well. It's hard enough photographing the stuff that turns out good.
Right.
Which that's actually another interesting conversation. That next time you're on, I want to talk about photographing miniature work.
Yeah, like
a lot of times,
they call it micro taking or something like that.
Macro photography.
Yeah,
yeah. The problem is, like, shit looks really good like this, and then when you take a picture of it to see all the detail, it looks like a fucking kindergartner did it with a crayon.
Yeah.
So anyway, but let's save that for, that's a whole nother conversation. So yeah, I honestly, I don't know when the last time is that I picked up a paintbrush, to be really honest. It's been months.
Well, when was the last time anyone's like gone out and bought a packaged miniature anymore? Like, I know you don't have a 3D printer, Bride, but
no, I do.
Oh, you do? You just don't? Do you run it? Or?
I have a filament printer, which I've determined is just not up to
very good for printing.
It's not for minis. It's for terrain. It's great.
Yeah.
I've actually been thinking about a resin printer, but that's a whole, I don't know. I got to be.
Well, right now the price point on resin printers is insane. Like, it is.
Talk to me about that off chat, and we can do something.
Yeah, because like I literally was creeping some printer sites, and there was they had 8 different resin printers published across many different manufacturers that were under $200.
Yeah.
And I know there's a science and a method even behind, how to do resin. But from what I understand, resin printers, they're so affordable now that if you want a resin printer with a big plate versus one with a small plate, right? You could buy a smaller resin printer to do your tiny, like, scale miniatures that you use, just the standard minis.
Yep.
Right. And then you could buy a different resin printer to do your large
different job.
Yeah, for like the bigger miniatures.
Yeah.
And you'll get really good quality because you're scaling your resin printers according to what you want. And it's still, at the end of the day, whether you buy an anniversary ender or a credulity or whatever is out there for filament, PLA or ABS, even 2 resin printers are still going to be cheaper than the best filament printer you can buy to do the same thing. Still going to be cheaper. Yeah. It's just, you got to mess with chemicals. And I'm always very
that's why I don't want to get rid of it, because all the ventilation and all that stuff. So Paradox, real quick, Paradox, I don't clean up my minis with Photoshop, because that doesn't which is why at a later date I want to talk about photographic minis. But cleaning it up with Photoshop, to me, does not portray the actual work that I've done. So I don't go there. I could, because it's what I do day to day, but
I think that's definitely going to be a great future topic.
Yeah.
Because I always take pictures of my actual game boards that we use in our games, because I like to tell a little story behind them and show folks that the kind of retail industry of miniatures and miniature terrains that exist out there in the retail space used to be affordable, and that's when I bought them all. Now, when you look at the chain supply problem that happened over the last 2 years, and now we have another looming chain supply problem with UPS potentially going on strike.
What?
Yeah, UPS is like probably going to go on strike. 300,000 employees walking off the line. So, for me, the heyday of miniatures, for me personally, the heyday of miniatures was like back in 2018. Like, I don't know what it was about that particular year, but I was really having fun with the booster box sets that they would send out. They were really really decent. And if you're a good painter, you could always primer them and repaint them again anyways, if you wanted to. But a lot of the first generation, 4D Wizard stuff that was coming out was, really, really, really kind of nice. And I was enjoying that. And I was doing my dragon collection. But now that I have a 3D printer and I have access to Etsy and I have access to the supply chain, I'm kind of not walking into retail stores anymore to buy miniatures. I'm not making that trip anymore. Not only because I think COVID kind of drove some of that interaction out of me, which I'm going to continue to try to get rid of. I want to get back into, with people again. But like within 30 miles of me, there's 2 game stores. It's like, if you go to the same 2 game stores all the time, is there really enough interesting miniatures to really draw you back every time? And there really isn't. No. There really isn't. And I'm wondering if we're beginning to now live that transition of eventually everyone's going to have just a very simple ability to print whatever mini they want at home.
Well, let's look at it this way. Okay. Take all of the 3D and all the Etsy and all that stuff, put it aside. All right. Yeah, I agree. I like to try to shop from my local store also. And my local store in particular had WizKids, and they also had a full line of Reaper minis. A few months ago, they got rid of the Reaper minis entirely. So all they have now is WizKids. And I have kind of have a love-hate with WizKids, okay? To just throw something on the table. First of all, the unpainted ones look great until you paint them, and then they look like shit. I hate them. Painted ones look like shit, but they're great for, filler on the table, bad guy or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're not really cheap enough, in my opinion, to treat them like that. Where it's like, I'll just buy a bunch of these just to, to have extra shit, in a Tupperware box that I can grab.
Yeah. Andy, of your library of miniatures that you have, how many of them are your actual own prints? Quite a bit, or do you still dabble in the retail community?
So occasionally I do. If I need something, or, like the pre-painted adult chromatic dragons specifically.
Right.
I bought all of those just because I thought they were cool.
Okay, I gotta interrupt because Paradox brought it up. You better turn on the fucking rant cam.
I'm going there.
Because, okay,
poor
Warhammer
quality.
minis, Games Workshop minis. Everybody knows how I feel about these. They are the best miniatures out there in terms of the sculpts and the quality, and they are just fucking fantastic. Warhammer 40K in particular. My whole family was killed by Warhammer. God damn it. They are the best minis out there, but they just fucking ass rape you on that stuff.
Yeah,
ass rape you. They are great to paint. They're amazing, but I actually have a plethora of old 40K stuff that I collected from years ago. I have not bought a Warhammer 40K or a Games Workshop miniature in over 10 years because of the prices. It's fucking ridiculous, and I won't go there. So pursuant to that, what I was saying before, let's look at what we have if we take 3D out of the picture, okay, in terms of retail minis. We've got WizKids, we've got Games Workshop, and we've got Reaper. That's generally it for full lines of minis.
The only exception would be the other part of the show that we'll talk about is like Hero Forge and some of the
right, but that's still part of the 3D printing thing, because that too, you're paying $30 for a mini.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's custom, so I've bought them before and I've been happy with them, but let's leave them out also because, again, that's price. So Games Workshop is priced out right there. This is just my opinion. WizKids, they suck. For anybody who is a mini painter, let me preface that, okay? Because it's not fair to me. It's not fair of me to just say across the board they suck. For anybody who likes really well painted stuff or paints their own, they suck. Okay? For people who do not paint or can't or really just don't have the time or don't want to or whatever, they're great. All right? Admittedly, they are great. For those of us that like to paint, that leaves Reaper, in my opinion.
I do like we talked about last show, their bigger monsters from WizKids to paint are better than PC minis.
I'll give you that.
Even still, they go down an assembly line and get dunked in a 10 pounds of primer.
Yeah.
And you can't see all the details very well anyways. So, if they were able to, put a less heavy coat of primer on it, they'd be a lot better.
Well, to be perfectly honest, they should not be priming them.
No.
Selling them as pre-primed, again, that appeals to somebody who doesn't really know about painting.
Yep.
And anybody who's a skilled painter is going to prime them the way they want anyway. You either use black or white depending on what your tones are.
Yep.
So selling them pre-primed, because you're selling them to people who either aren't going to paint, and then why call it pre-primed? There's no purpose to prime it.
So back to that original question, Andy, how many minis do you think you have on the shelf right now that are your prints, like what you printed?
So I have 2 display cases here in my apartment. One section that's, I don't know, it's about this big.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe 3 feet tall or so.
Okay.
That is just full on the inside, and then on top, because I have it set up that on top of it, those are all 3D printed non-WizKids models.
Right.
And then the bottom shelf on that is all the WizKids and Reaper minis that I've painted before I got my 3D printer.
Gotcha. Well, one of the things I really enjoy about the whole 3D printing of miniatures in general is I find once I have a printer, like I've got a great printer for terrain. It works great. I'm building a castle, and my intention was to build a permanent city and village kind of board so that whenever the fantasy games come into a city and I need a battle cam set up, it works fine. It does what I need it to do. Yep. I've got friends that love to paint, so I can hand it off to them. They don't have to pay for the mini. They get to go paint and have a good time, which I want to follow this up later with a question about paints and, what are some ideas there. But now that I'm playing more games, I'm looking at the Walking Dead game that's coming out soon. I'm starting to read up on the Aliens role-playing game. I'm reading up a lot of the retro Star Trek game. Star Wars just put out a new publication to their new RPG game as well. I feel like with printing, you can now print miniatures that are relevant to the games that you're playing, as opposed to being kind of like held captive to the online stores or your local store that are only carrying D&D minis, So it's not like you got a lot of options. Now, quite a few stores that can afford to carry it are carrying, obviously, GW, Star Wars, and a few other cadres of pre-boxed minis. But in reality, Kickstarter seems to be the main store that we're all kind of going to these days.
Yep.
I think Catalyst Gaming did a good job of printing and creating a whole line of minis at reasonable pricing, which once again, I wish they'd stop with the fancy packaging and just send me the fucking shit in a plastic bag. It doesn't make it, because I know that's expensive. I know that packaging's expensive.
Oh, a lot of times when you get to a certain production number, the packaging costs way more than the product.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty. It's got cool artwork on it, and I'm sure it's, like eye candy for those that are shopping. But for the most part, most people just want the mini. It's like the packaging just seems like a waste. But
there's two other sources though that I just thought of. One is Skinny Minis by Dungeon in a Box.
Yes, that's true. That's one option.
I backed one of their Kickstarters a few months ago, and I got those a few months ago. And again, for mobs or for really large monsters, they're beautiful. Right. Printing is fucking phenomenal. They're awesome. I've realized already. I mean, I ordered like $300 worth of that shit, and I've got 3 binders full. I've realized already the only downside is finding the stuff in the pages of the binders. But I mean, that's kind of just your organizational stuff.
I never got into Skinny Minis because I never felt attached to them. Like they never felt important to me.
Well, again, just from a cost standpoint.
Yeah.
Especially, like I said, especially for mobs and shit, you don't want to paint 50 skeletons, and you just need them quick.
Oh, man, just buy a box of Zombicide, baby.
I was just going to say the other one, and I actually think it's the best source for minis these days.
Board games.
Is board games, specifically CMON games. Zombicide is the first one that pops to mind, but you pick up a board game for $100, you get an awesome fucking board game, and you get like 100 freaking minis, or 80 minis or whatever.
It's like, you playing, if you're doing Call of Cthulhu stuff, you just buy the Cthulhu Death May Die board game, and you got all your Eldritch monsters right there. I've
got about 150 miniatures from the Cthulhu mythos. And I use them in D&D too, the cultists and all that shit. I mean, to be honest, that's, like I said, that's worth spending the money to me to get that whole box full of crap, and then you get a free game.
Yeah.
Board game opportunities. So Andy, how do you pick your paints? Let's say you're new. Like I have to do this every time that I recall that not everyone has played D&D for 40 years. So I have to put on like my new player hat to get myself to understand. If you're getting into painting for the first time, how do you pick a paint? Like, how do you know which paints to go with? Can you go to Michael's, or do you buy the worksheet? Like, how do you do that?
So yeah, you can realistically, hobby paint, craft paint that you're going to find at Walmart, Michael's, Hobby Lobby. It's very heavily pigmented, and it's not really made for minis.
Yeah.
It's great for terrain stuff. Because it's cheap and you're not using expensive, miniature paint.
Right.
I know WizKids, when I started, had a thing with the Army Painter.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
where you got a free mini, you got a couple brushes, and then you got like 10 or 15 paints for like $30.
Yeah.
Granted, the bottles are tiny, and they're not made to last you for your entire time doing it. It's just enough to get you into it and see what you like. Those are great. I think they've now may have gone separate ways from Army Painter and are with Vallejo.
Yes. I saw that.
In my mind, Vallejo makes the best paints. They're not overly expensive like Games Workshop and Citadel's paint line is. I've never used Citadel. I've only ever used Army Painter and Vallejo. When I first started, I liked Army Painter stuff. And then I bought some Vallejo paints, and I really liked those, and that's just what I've stuck with.
I would actually...
Paradox, I do... Go ahead, Andy.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I do spend money on Games Workshop paints. I do like their paints. I use both Vallejo, Monocolor. Yeah, I use both Vallejo and Games Workshop. Games Workshop, some of their pre-mixed colors are just phenomenal.
And they're pretty forgiving, I think.
They're very forgiving. Their contrast paints are great. Their glazes are great. Their paint, yeah, they're expensive still. Are they overpriced? Yes. Yeah, like their specialty paints, like Blood for the Blood God it's this glossy, sticky red paint that looks like blood. So,
but really quick,
I do use both, but Vallejo and their model colors,
model color and game color. I use the game color just because it's a little bit brighter.
Yeah,
it's kind of designed more for that fantasy.
Yeah, but their range of colors is extensive.
Andy, do you have any like shortcuts or cheats or kind of like things that you've developed on your own to kind of make it your own? You know what I mean? Like it's like if somebody were to look at one of your models, would they say, "Oh yeah, Andy painted that"? Is there something about your paints that would stand out that way? Do you think?
I think so. I know. The last time we chatted, Brian said that a lot of my stuff looked like McFarlane styled.
Yeah.
So I think I just naturally kind of go for the darker tones and darker colors. But I don't know, when I see stuff, I can recognize that it's mine just because I've seen it.
Right.
And I think due to just the fact that I like those darker movies, right? Like, darker horror movies, darker action movies. I tend to paint in darker colors. I dress in all black at work. Granted, I also work with barbecue, so I tend to get dirty. So it hides the colors a lot easier. The dirt
barbecue sauce for the barbecue god.
Exactly.
Like you hold your black t-shirt up to the light, and it's like all.
Yeah.
It looks like bullet wounds.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but I do, I try to find where the higher spots would be on a specific model where the light is hitting it, to make that specific section brighter. So just as like a contrast between, those super dark shadows versus the really high highlights.
How do you, first of all, do you use, I forgot if we talked about this before. You don't use an airbrush, do you?
I do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I do a mixture of both.
How much airbrush do you use compared to brushes?
So it depends on the model. If it's, this toddler right here in the background, that was done, 80% was done with the airbrush. And I'm still at the point where I'm going back in and doing all of the highlights by hand, just because I can't do those tiny little spots with an airbrush because I haven't done it. Yeah. So I did buy recently back in like March. I bought one of the Harder and Steenbeck's Infinity, super high end airbrush.
So did I, and I've used it once because
I've used it twice, and I don't thin my paints enough.
That was my follow-up question, was thinning paints for airbrush, because I will admit, I am still very, very much a novice when it comes to airbrushing, and mostly it has to do with paint consistency.
So with my Iwata, which is like my workhorse airbrush, I know how thin I can go and how thick I can go, and it's going to be perfect every time. The consistency is kind of like creamer, milk consistency. So that way it doesn't spider web when you spray it on something close by, but it's also not thick like ketchup and clogging up the airbrush every time I'm spraying with it.
Okay.
So, but yeah, with the Harder and Steenbeck one, it's just like I thin it down too much, and then it just sprays everywhere, and I get the runs everywhere on it.
Yeah.
Or it's not thin enough, and it just doesn't come out. So
yeah. I've run into the same thing. I've tried using it for OSL, object source lighting.
Yep.
Which, in my opinion, is like one of the most awesome painting talents for miniatures to have, is to be able to do OSL. And I've been that's another thing. Are the fluorescent paints from this is FX Supercolor, but I've also got the Vallejo and game model and all that shit.
Yep.
So yeah, what do you do a lot of? How do you know what deals with?
Like the consistency of milk, of fine milk.
Oh, okay.
Milk is actually food, Brian.
Okay.
Not a beverage.
Yeah, so that's something that I've one of the things I've been working on is OSL work with a brush, and because I haven't been able to get there with an airbrush yet. But even with a brush, it's tough.
Well, and even like the pre-mixed airbrush paints, I'll still add a couple drops of thinner to it just to make sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not thin enough.
Yeah.
Or it sits on a shelf.
Yeah.
And you can never quite shake it back to its normal consistency.
That's why I bought a vortex mixer.
So really?
I don't ever have to shake the bottle anymore.
So did I.
Just stick it on there and it does it for me.
Yeah, you just press and it's done. Yeah.
So you guys have all these tools and methods, and you hardly paint.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like,
for me, it's partly it's a
laziness.
Summer. No.
You're right. It's mostly laziness. I was wrong. Sorry.
Mostly no. It's a summer winter thing, kind of. There's just a lot to do in the see. Chicago in the summer is different than Chicago in California, Jason, because we only have 3 weeks of sun.
I didn't know we had a Chicago in California.
I'm sorry, winter. Winter in Chicago is different than winter in LA.
I didn't know we had winter in LA. That's interesting.
Exactly.
You guys did for like a month earlier this year.
Yeah, a month. It's usually how long our winter is here.
That's my point. So anyway, but I love that. I love the colors. Not only the colors, but the specialty lines of paint within their main lines that like Vallejo's coming out with and whatnot, which are the like fluorescent paints, these contrast paints that I think Paradox mentioned, which is it's like a wash, and a paint all in one. I love a lot of those really specialty paints. Do you use a lot of those, or do you just kind of mix all your stuff kind of custom?
So I haven't used any of the contrast paints before, and all of my friends are like, how do you not have contrast paints? It's just never been a thing that I've purchased, mostly because I just don't know how to use them. So, but I do have all of the Vallejo ink sets that they made.
Yeah,
and I love those because they're super thin. They're basically a contrast paint.
Right. Yeah.
But I really like using them for shadowing because they're heavier pigmented, but they're transparent. So using them in shadows or as a glaze to kind of help smooth out lines and everything, it works really, really well for that. But yeah, for the most part, I just have their game color stuff, and I find the colors that I like and use, and that's kind of just what I've been
I haven't been to a Gen Con for a while. It's been a while. I think the last con I went to was WonderCon, and I mostly kind of got into buying people's artwork because I have all this wall space and I've got art everywhere.
Yeah.
Do cons still do painting contests? Are those still a thing?
They did last year at Gen Con.
Okay.
I was going to enter it, but I couldn't figure out how to get the model I wanted there without it shattering into a billion pieces.
Right.
The airline.
Because I feel like if anything that did wonders for the idea of a miniature line was the Golden Demon tournament, for Warhammer. I think
they still do it.
Yeah, well, I know. I mean, I know that the Rogue Trader tournaments were always kind of like the renowned, all these Golden Demon winners would go take their armies to Rogue Traders, and they'd have these amazing tournaments with these amazing painted, armies. And like someone who didn't know how to play a game would look at these beautiful pieces of art and go, oh, this is interesting. And I feel like that's one of the things that hasn't really been very well promoted in the WotC, it's WotC generation of controlling, access to those types of fantasy minis to a certain degree. But yet they'll tout the artwork of an MTG card, and I'm like, I could appreciate that. Like the Lord of the Rings artwork on MTG cards is very retro, very cool.
Yeah.
The way they did the the recent release. But it feels like they should do something like that to encourage people to try the Vallejo paints or inks, or like I don't really equate painting tournaments with anything other than Warhammer, to be honest with you. I've never really been to enough cons to be relevant, whether or not those painting tournaments happen. It feels like that would be pretty cool.
So I know with Gen Con they have, and I got to look into it for this year because I was going to paint a model and enter it just to see how I could do. But I know that they don't you don't have to paint it there. You can spend the time, paint something, and then bring it to Gen Con.
Oh, that's not a tournament. I kind of like the idea of everyone having an equal field of play.
Yeah.
And then they all you have to use Vallejo paints. You have to use like certain brushes. You have to kind of like to promote the idea of the product. That seems like one of the kind of like, landscapes that you'd want to do that in. I mean,
I know that they have events where you can do painting stuff there. So like I signed up for a non-metallic, just tabletop standard paint job event. So hopefully I can learn how to do non-metallic.
That's speed painting.
Yeah, people that can speed paint stuff that just
I watched
I can't do.
I watched the YouTube channels. There's a couple guys I should actually use correct term. There's a couple people, like I've seen female painters and male painters, but I've seen quite a few YouTube influencers that speed paint.
Yeah.
I watched this one gal speed paint an army in like 2 hours. And I'm like, I could do it better than anyone else. Primer it black, and then some silver paint. There's my iron, my iron fists. There you go.
That's an awesome fucking idea.
So like a Bob Ross robot speed painting mini.
Yeah,
that'd be
awesome. A happy little bloody head right here.
and whenever you give skulls to the blood god, the skulls should be happy that they're going.
Some happy little blood drops.
I know that there's a new technique called slap chop that has come out, and that's basically yeah. Oh, I know it's the weirdest name, and it's
back in my day we called that car boosting.
Slap chop.
But so
not chop shop, dummy. Slap chop. That's that vegetable thing.
That's so basically you do a full zenithal prime, so you prime the model black, and then over top you spray it gray, and then you do a dry brush of white over all of that, because the white will make all of your highlights brighter, which it makes sense. And then you paint it in contrast paints or speed paints, and then you dry brush it with a brighter color for all of those sections. And then you get and that's it. And like, it's really cool. Yeah,
it's like whack fuck.
Hey there, how about we play a game of whack fuck with your paints there, you fucko?
So slap chop, the actual name of it?
Yeah.
Okay, I got to do some YouTube searching on that, because
I mean, for a they call it now, so it's parade ready and table ready. Parade ready is what you're gonna put on Instagram. Table ready is I got a fucking game, Warhammer tournament, and I need 50 Marines. That's I've heard of that. I didn't hear. I've never heard the term slap chop.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it.
I do that for when I have to do a bunch of minis for my tabletop. But I don't do I typically will prime them in gray and then just paint it in inks and call it good. I don't do
See, my heyday of painting, when I forced myself to do it, when I put a gun in my mouth and said I'm gonna paint.
You shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
Yeah, well, I definitely shouldn't paint. That's true.
No, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I would have cases of black primer paint. This was back when Raul Partha was in the game.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I would line up all my Rao Partha miniatures, and I would spray paint them all with black primer, really, really get them all good and covered. And then I would go to like the paint store where you could actually still buy spray paint without, 2 forms of ID, your passport, your proof that you're not going to deface the neighborhood, all that shit.
And your firstborn.
And your firstborn. And I would just get like 4 colors. And I would be like, okay, these guys are all going to be tan. And I would just I'd hold them up on a board and just let the paint kind of like mist on them. And I say, okay, well, I give these guys a little color. And I could do 100 minis in a day. And they all look like they, kind of went through the liquid rainbow. I didn't care at the time. It was just so that I didn't have a blank mini on the table. I hate that. I never liked that look of a blank mini.
I know.
It made me feel lazy, and I hated that.
Yeah.
I hated feeling lazy.
We have blank ones on the table all the time, and it bugs me, but what the hell are you going to do about it?
Hey, I'm a professional pay-to-play DM. I've got to at least put a mini on there that looks like it's been painted by some small adolescent in a foreign country.
I'm going to have to try your method, Andy, because I've done one set. Another good source is Game of Thrones minis. Because you can buy a pack of basically all the same. Like I bought a pack of Lannister soldiers, which are all basically the same guy in different poses, which again is great for like Town's Guard. So I painted them all, gray, painted the chainmail silver, gave them all a red cloak. And then I did use Games Workshop's contrast paints. But what was interesting is I also used, I think it was their white primer. And their white primer is really gritty, which for a larger model sometimes is good. But Andy, after you spray it, it's like
you get like a sand texture almost.
Yeah, like sandpaper.
Yeah. Well, with contrast paints, that's a no-no because then the contrast picks up that entire fucking texture, and it literally looks like they were like sand sculptures.
So what that is you were too far when you primed it, and it dried just enough to cause that texture. Yep.
Interesting.
I was wondering about that.
Not the paint, it's my shitty technique.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I'll try using it again.
So the industry as itself seems to be shrinking, I think. I don't think we get nearly as many choices as we would like to get. We don't have Grenadier.
I would agree with that. Again, back to my point, all the ancillary, the board games, everything, take all that away. We've got WizKids and Reaper. And that's kind of it.
Yeah. And I think with 3D printing, I think more and more people are going to start shifting to printing what they want at home. So it's more about the STL files and how you're doing your slices. And there's a whole other community around that other portion of the miniature community about the at-home printing that everyone's doing.
So let me ask you a question on that topic, Andy. So one thing that I've noticed, and again, I haven't delved too deeply into it, but one thing that I've noticed is, so now we've got, to Jason's point, we've got this whole side retail landscape of 3D minis, whether they be printed or whether they be STL files. But it seems like, I see a lot of the same STL files sold by 37 different people.
Yeah. So I know a lot of the companies, they all talk to each other because it is still small, and they try to make it so each month is something different, and that they're not doing the same thing every back to back months, especially if you're subscribing to those people, because like, why do you need 3 months worth of demons and devils when like Loot Studios, they switched up their scheduling, and so the first 6 months of this year was all dragon related stuff, and I was super excited about that because who doesn't like dragons,
but after the second month you're like, okay, I don't need any more fucking dragons.
Well, so that was the thing, was each month was something different, and they had different different dragons or different draconic creatures. It wasn't just okay, cool, here's a whole month of That's also true. And it was great when I was DMing when I was DMing Descent into Avernus. It was great because I had all kinds of demons and devils and stuff that I could use to print and throw at my party. And then I'm not running that anymore, and I'm not going to be using any demons and devils in my next campaign. So now I have all these models that I'm like, well, cool. Now they're just going to sit here. I don't need to print them, and they're taking up space on my hard drive.
Yeah.
So that's what Loot Studios is doing now. Is they're doing a whole 6-month thing of demons and devils and stuff, and I'm like,
I'll have to check that out because I agree with Paradox. Demons and devils are fucking awesome.
So that brings up kind of a final point, right? Where the industry is and how we're limited in our choice. The transition to the at-home printer, regardless of the minis and what you print at home, the paint advice I think is amazing, because even though I kind of don't enjoy painting, I like it when people help other people get into it, because there are certain things that I think people can find cathartic. And I think painting minis could easily be cathartic because you could sit there, paint, watch a movie or listen to a movie or listen to a podcast while you're doing it. Well, what I find what's interesting is how the online digital development is now creating the ability for people to go into like Hero Forge, build a digital mini that you can then use in a VTT. So if you're a remote gamer, you still have that kind of touch. You're like that special touch that you can kind of do with a digital mini that you're using for your remote, your remote game. I probably have close to 500 Hero Forge minis that are on my Tailspire system that I use for my remote games. And I switch it up between that and my battle cam, so I had a real special surprise one day. My Friday game, I have 2 Friday games, and one of my Friday games, Stormwatch, bring your own mini VTT. One of the players bought figures for everybody, and they had them all done on the high-end spectrum of the Hero Forge painting. So they sit up there on my shelf, and it's affected me. I tend to use more battle cams with them, because they went through that whole, the player wanted to see what their mini looked like on a table, because we can't physically get together because it's a remote game.
Yeah.
I've done that before for one of my groups. I bought everybody a Hero Forge mini and painted it for their specific character. I do that whenever I start a new character. I buy like 2 poses of the same model that I do, and
right.
Those. So yeah, I get that. I mean, it makes sense.
No,
and
when I have my players, if there's a Loot Studios model that fits their character, I'll print the small 32mm one, and then I'll print the 75mm to paint that, so that way they can have it as a, this is my character. It's, you can see the details better. It looks bigger. It's cooler.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to having the little one on the table that you can't see all of the great detail in the mini one.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up, because just lately I thought, the first thing I thought was I got to start painting again, just to kind of, chill and like you said, cathartic, and just, unplug from everything else. But, I was thinking the other day, like I finished these minis and we play with them and they get chipped and they get, pieces break off and shit like that. And you spend all this time playing them or painting them. And then some of them you're like, I don't even actually want to use this, which belies the whole purpose of doing it in the first place. But I've been seeing a lot of people lately on Instagram doing the larger busts of minis. And there is some fucking amazing work that goes into those.
Oh yeah.
And that's cool. Jason, to your point, even just having that at the table, like as a player in front of you, even if you've got an unpainted version or a WizKids version or whatever for the map, just having that in front of you is pretty fucking cool.
It's very tactile.
To Paradox's comment there, yes, when you don't ever finish your player character mini, because then they die.
Very to the superstition of it all.
I've never heard of that. That's funny.
I had that with my first PC. I did a Elf Ranger from, I think it was Reaper, and I took a fishing line and attached it onto the bow, and
Oh wow,
that's awesome.
Painted that to make it look like a bowstring and everything, and he died that session. Like, I finished.
There's a solution to that. Hey, it's my cousin who happens to be an Elf Ranger also, and he just came in from the north.
Yeah,
it's my twin cousin.
Yeah, if Gary is still on, or Matt, in about 30 seconds, there's going to be a comment on that.
That BBC Sticksman is my dad.
Oh, hey!
I told him that I was on. He had to watch. So.
Oh well, thank you for joining us, Andy's dad. That's awesome.
Poopy Pants Maggie, I love that
McGee.
name.
Oh, Poopy Pants McGee, that's my DM. He's the one.
Nice.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's Dan.
Okay, well, Poopy Pants McGee, you win for the best screen name ever. So we'll send you some stickers also. DM me on Instagram and give me your info, and I'll send you some stickers. No joke. That's hilarious.
So speaking of having, the board game or virtual tabletop minis, there is a company called The Last Board Game, or I think it's The Last Board Game. They make a virtual tabletop that you can put onto your table, and then they have little discs that you can print.
Oh yeah.
And then you put it onto the bottom of the mini. Yeah. And it will show line of sight and everything.
I've seen that. That's pretty fucking cool.
It's a really cool idea. They have a lot of bugs with it, but
yeah.
Well, technically, I think they're still alpha, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So that was the last thing I wanted to ask you. What is your take? You guys, I think you guys know what my take is on VTT versus physical, table maps. How do you guys feel about that?
I would rather play in person. Just for me, there's too many distractions if I'm sitting at my computer with multiple screens. I can have a window open somewhere else and not actively be paying attention.
I live and die by it.
By remote.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with remote because it's obviously
it's the limitation that you have.
Yeah, I mean,
it's opened up.
If you're live in your studio or your game table, like my Monday and Tuesday games, I would love to be able to take the time to have somebody print out like a really kind of faux, immersive map. That would be kind of fun to pull that off. When I go to my Ren Fair events or my SCA events, there's a couple vendors that do hand painted maps on leather pieces, and I buy those for props. I'll buy those for props. But yeah, I only run 2 games live. The other 9 games are all remote. So I would prefer a much more tactile map approach and stuff like that. But I'm still a fan of theater of the mind. So I treat maps as a prop, not necessarily as something that's integral to every time we meet at the table. So I'm kind of, 50 in, 50 out, depending on if it's needed or not.
I guess it's not so much. My question is not so much in person versus remote, because remote has become a huge part of play. That too. More so there's kind of 2 camps for remote. One is having a camera set up on your table, like I do, like you do, Jason, a lot of your stuff. And you're moving minis around and stuff like that. And the other is to go full digital VTT, which in Gary's game we're using Roll20, so everything is done that way. So
I still like I have enough dice that I will avoid rolling digital dice as much as possible.
They force me to use digital dice in that campaign.
Yeah,
fucking hate.
I am fortunate enough that I've established an honor system, and people are free to use whatever dice method they want to. A lot of times it's what their preference is, because maybe they're math challenged, or newer players that are still learning the ropes, and they like to use Beyond because it just makes it easier for them to understand what they're doing. And then eventually they fall out of love with digital dice, and they love the sound and feel of the real bones being kind of rolled. Yep. But, to give you an example, in the corner here, I have that ready to go for a session that's coming up next week. So it's a tavern, and it's, I love being able to, pop up that battle cam so that they can just feel like they're at the table, touch the minis, and, feel like that immersion is pulling you back into the game.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm not opposed to the new technology. I'm opposed to the new technology that whose purpose is to replace old technology. I think using both is awesome. I mean, a lot of the digital stuff. Yeah, of course, absolutely. The Dice Tower's 1 yard.
It was big enough that it ended up burning out my motherboard on my printer during.
I would love that in a combat when it takes 5 minutes to roll a single die and people are waiting.
Oh, it rolls pretty quickly through it, but it's on the table. I can't go get it because it's in the other room. But it's tall enough that it's 4 sections tall. So when it's all stacked together, it's probably a little over 2 feet tall. So awesome. And it's really cool. But yeah, it's also
the player's turn is over by the time they roll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just feel that minis have always been a part of the game. They are a big part. They're representative of what the game is about.
Hey, the original minis were bottle caps with sari pawns inside of them, and then you tape little face stickers. You remember those scratch and sniff stickers?
Yeah.
We used to take those and draw little face shots on them and stick them on the sari pawns, and all the orcs were limes, and and it was fun. You didn't have a budget, you didn't have money, so minis have always played some kind of role, whether it's something you just kind of kit bashed to make it work or whatever.
So Poopy Pants. I can't even. So Poopy Pants McGee. Interesting point. I am eagerly waiting for a Kickstarter of Pixel Dice, which is just that. It is a set of lighted Bluetooth dice that that have an app, so you can completely control the color. You can assign sounds to specific rolls. And
then your roll outcome shows up on the app.
And your roll
physically roll the dice.
Will transfer over to like Roll20 or D&D Beyond or whatnot.
Right.
I think I backed that in 21, and I'm still waiting for them. Suppose I ordered $300. It seems like everything I back on Kickstarter is about $300.
Well, that's a monumental savings for you, Bri.
Yeah. So I think I ordered 2 full sets of those. My full dice set. I don't know how we got on dice, but my full dice set is not.
Because you went over to maps. You started talking about maps.
I know.
And then you started ranting about dice.
Yeah,
and then
my full dice set is, I think, 11 dice, though, because I double up on everything except the 10s.
I'm definitely not a dice goblin, so that's never been an addiction for me.
I'm a dice dragon.
Yeah.
Are you?
I bypassed the goblin stage a while ago.
I know, same. I was just looking the other day. I'm like, why the fuck did I buy $100 worth of Kraken dice when they came out? Because they're nothing special.
And I'm definitely an enabler. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Callista, her dice collection is, like those 7 trays where you could sort parts.
Yeah.
She used them to sort her different dice. So she's got just in her tray set, she's got 45 sets.
Oh, that's.
And then she has one of the Laura Bailey style, mimic bags with all the dice in there. Yeah. And then she has all of her rock dice and her metal dice, right?
Yep.
So she's got all of her level up dice and her micro level up dice. And then she's got her armory dice. And I'm just like, you're never in your life going to use all those dice. You're just never going to use them all. And she's all, well, then you better start more games.
When the apocalypse comes and your only weapon against the zombies is a slingshot, trust me, you'll use all those dice.
and putting all those D4s down for caltrops.
Exactly.
Caltrops? Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, we did it again. Another hour. Gone and gone. Who's going to sign us off today? I think we should let...
I think Andy should sign us off tonight. Wait, hold on. What is... dice have a max mileage of the use of... Well, and also the color of your dice have to match. Like for my warlocks, I always use greens because it's like eldritch fire. So, the color has... There's a science to dice in this game. Trust me.
Yeah, instead of bottle caps for Fallout, we'll use dice. That'll be our new...
What's the science of dice? Flags is like vexology. What is the science of dice? I'm gonna do a dice science show, which has absolutely no actual science.
Into the random number generator, my friend.
Your
addiction.
Diceology. There you go. Diceology. All right, you win. Yeah. Okay. So, Jason, where can we find you?
Out in the worldsies.
Yes.
The best place to come find me is out at my Twitch channel, TTRPG Academy. Go to my About section. You'll find all my links. I have recently joined Threads to try them out because I am looking for abandoning Twitter. So Threads by Instagram is a new Twitter competer.
Wrong. Threads by Facebook.
It's by Meta. Not by Facebook.
Exactly.
Instagram's by Meta. So,
So you're giving up Elon for Mark. Let me know how that works out for you.
I'll tell you this much.
You turn on my rant cam again?
No, the button's broken. I've hit it too many times. No, it's just another space. I do plan on using it as a storytelling space for the most part. Promote the show to get people to come and watch and have some fun with it. But my goal with Threads is to actually create adventures that will be continuous and have some fun with that. Instagram, I like to promote all my different tables that I run with all the different minis and my creative content. I don't really go on Twitter anymore. I occasionally go on there, but it's so toxic. It's even difficult to look at. I have tried Mastodon a bit and Tribal and a couple of the others. Just be aware of what's out there and what's going on. Other than that, you can jump into our Discord. We have almost 400 people in our Discord. It's a real fun place to get some advice and learn some things. We're playing Candela Obscura. I definitely plan on playing Walking Dead when it comes out. I'm very much looking forward to that, getting a Walking Dead table going. But yeah, just pop over to Twitch, find all my links over there, and seek me out. And if you ever want to have a conversation about a game, I'm available.
Cool.
Or can find you, Brad? No, we're letting Andy walk us out. So where can we find you, Brad?
You can find me, as always, on Instagram is the best place, RPG&Co. Or check out the website, playrpgandco.com. We have all kinds of cool new digital content, some from me, some from Jason, a lot from Jason, some from the Bearded Nerd. And there will be a constant inflow of more. So check that out. Just before we go to Andy, I just want to say next week I will be on vacation. So Jason and Brian Gomez, the Bearded Nerd, will be talking about, I don't know what. What are you guys going to talk about?
I have no idea, but it's going to be fun. It may just be a Dash session. It may just be
given
Brian, and it may be just be, you know what? It's going to be all about Brian.
No rank cams.
No rank cams. No, Brian's pretty chill. So without me there will be no throwing of things at the screen.
I think one of the things with two seasoned GMs that have played a lot, I suspect we're going to talk a lot about players, games, and how does he run his table? How do how I run my tables, and maybe create a kind of like environment of discussing the challenges of challenging players and stuff. And talking about Brian while he's out. That is true.
Yeah, Brian Gomez is the anti-me when it comes to the rant cam because he's chill as fuck.
He is chill as fuck.
So next week is that. The week after, we are going to talk about
Mork Bork?
Well, no, I think we're going to do a general topic on apocalyptic theme.
Oh yeah, with Walking Dead.
Games.
Yep.
Week after, we're going to. Oh no, the week after that, I think we get to have Malcolm Trotter, Gentleman Game Master, on.
Yep, I believe so.
And then the week after that,
Mork
we're going to talk about Mork Borg, and Walking Dead and all that stuff. So we actually have a pretty decent lineup of shows pre-planned, like a real show.
Like we got real production value.
So
where can we find you, Andy?
Yeah.
You can find me on Instagram at DragonPainter468.
Oh, look, it's right there on the screen.
Yeah, Discord's the same. Discord's the same name. You can add me, talk about minis, send me messages. Check out the Instagram. See all
dirty miniature pics too.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, Andy, I still really want to do like a joint painting session with you.
Yeah.
That we stream, whether it's during this showtime or whether we do it offline and just post it VOD. Definitely want to do that.
Yeah, we can figure that out.
Very
awesome.
Cool.
And like I said, anytime you want to pop on the show, just let us know because we love having you here.
Hey, Brian.
Always enjoyable.
TPK.
Tell a story.
Play a game.
I don't know the rest of it.
Perfect. That was
sorry.
And be kind.
There you go.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you all for joining us.